Hello and welcome. I'm Jolene Fisher. I have a master's degree in exercise science and I am a national board certified health and wellness coach and have been for several years now. I've been working with clients since 2014 and I bought my first Inbody scale in 2018, the Inbody 770. Recently, we just purchased this 380 and so we have been going out into our community in Spokane Valley, Liberty Lake, Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, and doing pop-ups all over the area. And you may be watching this video because you just stepped off one of our machines, or you're watching this from anywhere in the world and you got off an Inbody 380 and you want to know a little bit more about how to interpret your results. That's what this video is all about, so let's jump in. We're going to start in the upper left-hand corner of your sheet and go through each of these items. This upper section of your Inbody sheet represents everything that makes up your total body weight on the scale. So if you're measuring yourself at home on just a regular scale, you see weight only. You don't know what that's made up of. So what this section is telling you is how much of you is made up of water, how much of you is dry lean mass, which is muscle mass and minerals added together, and then how much of you is actually body fat mass. Let's break this down just a little bit more. So you can see from this picture, the highlighted blue section is just your total body water at 88.4 pounds in this person's case. Their intracellular water is 55.3 pounds. That is how much water they hold inside each cell of their body. As you can see from the picture in the upper left-hand corner, the ICW points to a cell, and that's the intracellular water held inside the cell. And then this person has 33.1 pounds of extracellular water. That's how much water is held outside of the cell. So if you divide your extracellular water over your total body water, it'll give you a ratio. And we're going to look at that a little bit later in this video and what that ratio actually means. But if we look for edema in the body or somebody having too much extracellular water, that ratio is really going to tell us a lot. As you can see in this picture with the leg that's a little bit more swollen, that indicates too much extracellular water on the body. And we can be able to tell that by a ratio above 0.390. Next, we're going to look at dry lean mass. This is a really interesting indicator of how much bone mass we have added to our protein in our body. So dry lean mass is proteins plus minerals. And basically, it's everything that isn't water on our body. And this added to the total body water equals how much fat-free mass we have on our body. So this person has 121 pounds of fat-free mass when you add the 32.6 to their 88.4. And that fat-free mass is everything in the body that burns a calorie. It's their metabolically active tissue. So as the dry lean mass number goes up, what it indicates is that we're increasing muscle and bone, which is always a good sign that you're healing or you're getting heavier workouts, and those workouts are actually moving the muscle up to a degree and increasing your overall health. It could also mean an improvement in bone density, but it is really hard to tell if it's bone or muscle that's improving. And so I'll show you in a different section where we can just look at skeletal muscle mass independent of bone. But the nice thing about dry lean mass is that this is an independent marker outside of hydration status. So it's taken out of the equation when we're looking at how much inflammation you have in your body or how much intracellular water you have. And so we can independently see if dry lean mass is going up with training, that's a good sign that muscle building is going on beyond water retention or beyond any kind of water numbers. I want to take a second right here to acknowledge the women who are in perimenopause or menopause with regards to this dry lean mass section, because the Inbody scale is not the best indicator of where your bone health is. In fact, I actually recommend you do a DEXA scan to get your bone density scan done to just get a baseline and see where you're at if you've never done it before. All right, with that said, let's get back to the Inbody results interpretation. This last section in red is somebody's total body weight made up of in pounds of body fat. So when we take the 36.6 pounds of body fat and we add it to the dry lean mass and the water, we're going to get our total body weight. Now, if you divide body fat mass over your total body weight, you're going to get your body fat percentage. So in this case, 23.2% body fat for this person. Moving on down the Inbody sheet, we're going to look at the muscle fat analysis. So we look at the weight that we already knew was 157.6 from the graph above, and the body fat mass we already knew was 36.6 from the graph above. But what this is doing is showing us what those numbers actually look like on a scale compared to percentile norms. So you can see a arrow facing down and dark black lines in that column. You have the dashed area, which is your average area, and then you have the arrow facing up, and that area is our above average area for population data norms. So you can see from this particular person, their weight at 157 pounds is in the normal range. It's in that dashed area. The skeletal muscle mass is how much of you is weighing in pounds of muscle. And so this person has 67.7 pounds of muscle. That indicates they're in the above average range for muscle mass. And they have body fat mass at 36.6, which is right in that 100 percentile, slightly above midline of average for this particular person. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of skeletal muscle mass, because this is really important as we age. I'm showing you two different comparisons of women. The top one is a 55-year-old woman, and the bottom one is a 49-year-old woman. And you can see the difference in the lines on their skeletal muscle mass. The top one at 46.1 pounds on this woman is basically saying that she's in the below average range for her exact height and sex. So age has nothing to do with it, but these percentiles are based on what's norm for her exact height and sex. And it's saying that based on those things, she's actually in the below average range. Now, the person on the bottom with the 67.7, she's a little bit younger, but the fact that it's not based on age, it's based on height and sex, she's actually in that above average range. And so we don't want to see somebody in that below average range, because what that indicates is sarcopenia. And what sarcopenia is essentially is a disease of aging. The older we get, the more muscle mass we lose if we don't do anything about it. So if you're looking at your sheet right now and you're a little bit worried that your muscle mass is too low, it's time to hire a trainer, hire a health coach, and start working on getting yourself into the gym and doing heavier lifting, along with the help of eating better and getting more protein in your diet. But this picture right here just shows a general healthy muscle versus a sarcopenic muscle. And when muscle mass decreases, chronic diseases really worsen and the whole vicious cycle begins. And studies have shown that in cases of sarcopenia, the risk of cardiovascular disease increases 3.6 times, diabetes 3 times, and hypertension by 2 times. As muscle decreases, unused energy is converted into fat, which can also accumulate in your blood vessels, leading to metabolic disorders and syndromes and all sorts of things. So the name of the game here is to increase your skeletal muscle mass. So every time you get back on the scale, we want to see that number going up, not down. And so when you work with us at No Bad Days, we work to really just decrease fat off the body and maintain or gain in skeletal muscle mass. Now, while we're still looking at the muscle fat analysis part of your graph, I want you to pay attention to the curve of the graph. In this case, this one has a D curve. So the different type of curve actually indicates what your Inbody is telling you to do. So in this case, a D curve means that this person has a higher degree of muscle mass than they do body fat mass and weight. And so hence the middle line comes out further than the other two lines. An I-type person has a balanced shape, with the weight of their skeletal muscle mass and body fat being in harmony. And a C-type person is somebody whose muscle mass is less than their total body weight and body fat mass lines. And so that's indicate a C curve, which means that that person needs to lose body fat and potentially gain skeletal muscle mass. All right, now let's move on down the page to our segmental lean analysis. We're going to be looking at each section of the body in terms of the lean analysis. So this is how much of you is fat-free mass broken up into each area of the body. Fat-free mass for this person, their total body weight was 121 pounds, which was in the body composition analysis graph. And that's broken down segmentally. So as we look at the right arm, the top number means pounds, the bottom number means percentage. So as we look at that line again, we can indicate if somebody's in the below average, the average, or the above average, again, for their height and their sex. Again, the 100 percentile mark represents the healthy average for people of your exact height and sex. So for this particular person, you can see that their lines go all the way out to the above average in each category. What we want to look at here in lean analysis is that each of your percentiles is above 100%. So now you're able to compare right arm to left arm. What are your percentiles looking like? You look at your trunk. Is it above 100%? And right leg to left leg, are they even? Or are the right leg and left leg very far off of each other? Also, you can look at upper body compared to lower body. Are you much stronger and have more lean in the upper body? Or are you weaker and have maybe less bone density in the lower body? And so what lean body indicates is water, bone, and muscle all together. So it's hard to flesh out why these numbers might be low for you, because it could indicate dehydration, it could indicate low muscle mass, and it could also indicate low bone density. When we're looking at this graph, we want to make sure that there aren't any significant imbalances. So when we're looking at the upper body, we don't want to see much greater than a 6% difference between those percentiles. And anything greater than 10% is actually considered a significant imbalance, which would require some attention. So maybe you had a previous injury, overtraining on one particular side, or you need some unilateral exercises to balance you out. Now, with regard to the lower body, a 3% difference or higher is considered acceptable up to 5%. Over 5% difference for the legs is considered a flag, and basically means, again, you've got some major history with regards to an injury. You might have an uneven gait, or there's some training asymmetry going on that you need to address. Either way, it's just important to look at these imbalances. And overall, if you're under that 3% threshold for the legs or under that 6% threshold for the arms, it's not typically something that's going to raise a red flag, but every trainer is different. Every physical therapist is different. This would be really interesting to show somebody, if you're working with them on an injury, how well you're progressing toward getting back to normal. I love this part of the graph, the segmental lean analysis, when it comes to just noticing asymmetries in muscle, bone, and water weight. All right, let's work our way on down the graph to the ECW over TBW/phase angle chart. Now, I wanted to point out on this chart, this particular person who had a 0.392, which indicates an above average amount of extracellular water over total body water. This indicates that this person probably has some extra inflammation on their body. We don't necessarily know where that extra inflammation is on the Inbody 380, but if you're interested in knowing that, we can get you on the Inbody 770 machine. It will tell us exactly which segment of the body there you're having extra inflammation or extra water weight. So that is kind of helpful if this number is high. If this number is high, it could indicate that inflammation is coming from a recent injury. It could indicate an autoimmune disease or some state of disease. We don't know. It doesn't usually indicate that you've just drank too much water that day. But if this number is considered lower or below average, I've seen this in really highly athletic men with high amounts of skeletal muscle mass, but it could also indicate dehydration. So this is just an interesting number to look at. If this number is also high, it's going to contribute to extra weight on the body in terms of extracellular water. It's just something indicating that we need to keep an eye on it. And we can use this in context of blood work and all sorts of other indicators to kind of figure out what's going on in your body if there is some sort of disease process starting, or you already know, hey, yeah, I have an autoimmune disease, so this makes sense for me. This is an ECW over TBW analysis of a person in average extracellular water over total body water ratios. 0.375 is considered very healthy, right in a nice average range. So just compare your number to somewhere in that average range and you're probably fine. Again, above 0.390 is something to be kind of on the lookout for, and anything below 0.360 may indicate dehydration. Next, we're going to look at your phase angle number. This phase angle number is an indicator of cellular integrity and overall cellular health. So basically what's happening is there is a electricity that's coming through the Inbody, through your body, and it's butting up against your cells, and it's trying to determine how fast the electricity goes through that cell. And depending on how fast it gets through, it indicates how healthy that cell membrane is. And that's the outer portion of the cell that protects things from getting in that aren't supposed to get in, or from things going out that aren't supposed to go out. So if we have an unhealthy cellular membrane, the energy goes through really fast. And basically there's less resistance that the cell membrane is giving the energy from the Inbody. And so the higher the phase angle number, the better. And for women, I generally like to see your phase angle number be 5 or higher. And if it's much higher than that, that indicates you're probably very athletic, have a high degree of skeletal muscle mass, and have low amounts of inflammation on the body. If your number is considered lower than 5, you can go as low as about 4.5 and still be considered normal. Anything below 4.5 for a woman, though, is considered not great. It just indicates that there might be a high amount of inflammation in the body. There could be some illness or, again, an autoimmune disease, cancer, something lurking in the body. Maybe you're sick. So there's things that can affect phase angle number. But overall, there's something going on with the cell membrane that needs to be addressed. And that can be addressed through nutrition, better sleep, increasing your muscle mass, decreasing your inflammation. Now for men, not wanting to forget about you, we want to make sure that your phase angle number is at least above a 6, and anything higher than that is obviously good. Anything below a 5 for a guy is, again, considered maybe a little bit off and something to be kind of looking at in terms of what's going on inside that cell. Why is electricity getting in too easily? So again, phase angle number is just a marker of cellular integrity and overall cellular health. All right, guys, working our way down the sheet to the last section. This is your body composition history. So just what does your history look like over time? And it shows 10 up to the last 10 tests. Let's move on up to the upper right-hand corner of the page where your Inbody score will be listed. This score is based out of an 80, and the number goes higher when we have a higher amount of skeletal muscle mass to a lower amount of body fat. So the lower your body fat percentage, the higher the Inbody score. All right, let's move on down to SMI, which is your skeletal muscle index. The skeletal muscle index is kind of like BMI, only for muscle. So it is your skeletal muscle mass divided over your height. And basically, why is this important? Well, remember how we talked about sarcopenia earlier? It's really important to know that your skeletal muscle mass index is in an appropriate range. So for men, we want to make sure that you're greater than 7 kilograms per meter squared when it comes to SMI. And for women, you want to be greater than 5.7. So these are the values that you're going to be looking for in this section. On our Inbody 380 interpretation sheet, right after SMI, you might find HGS and go, what the heck is that? That stands for hand grip strength. And so we do have a hand grip dynamometer that you will squeeze right after you get off the Inbody 380. And those results can be applied to this sheet. So if you see HGS listed on there with a number, that's just indicating what your hand grip strength is. And I want to give you some normative values for both men and women for hand grip strength. Here's what good grip strength looks like for you. For guys in your prime, 20s to 40s, aim for 100 plus pounds on your dominant hand. Ladies, aim for 60 to 70 pounds. And as we age, it drops a bit, but staying above 80 pounds for men and 50 pounds for women in your 60s keeps you strong and independent. Want to know what your sarcopenia red flags are? Well, below 60 pounds for men or 40 pounds for women might mean it's time to hit those weights harder. We're now moving down one section on the right-hand side of your sheet, and this is where it says body fat, fat-free mass control. I love this section because it really guides you into what exactly you need to do in order to reach certain milestones. So where it says body fat mass, if you have a subtraction there where it says negative however many pounds, that's how many pounds you need to lose in order to get to midline of normal. So if you're a woman, midline of normal is 23% body fat. Midline of normal for a guy is 15% body fat. And where it says lean body mass, if you see double zeros, that means you do not need to gain any lean body mass. You have a perfect number. And if it says plus, that means you need to gain lean body mass. That could be muscle or bone. Probably doesn't mean water, but actually you could be a little bit dehydrated. But oftentimes this is typically referring to needing to gain muscle or bone. Moving down to our next section, we're going to look at segmental fat analysis. This is really actually kind of fun to look at because if you've lost a significant amount of weight on the Inbody and you can see one test to another, you can actually compare how much poundage you've lost in each section of the body just in terms of fat mass. So this has nothing to do with bone or muscle. It's just pure fat. And so I love this so much more than a circumference measurement because it's so accurate and we can really see how your body genetically is losing the fat off of your body. The next section down is visceral fat level. So this is based out of a scale of 1 to 10, and you can see based on the scale there, what is considered low, moderate, or high. So anything above a 10 is actually considered high. And so on your test, we want to make sure that your level says 10 or lower. And that means that you're just out of those risk factors for cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's disease risks, metabolic syndromes, and all those types of things. I love to talk about visceral fat because it's not being talked about. Doctors don't address this. They just say, hey, you have weight to lose. And yeah, you can see that you in a mirror look like you have weight to lose, but that's the pinchable fat that we can pinch on our body. That's called subcutaneous fat. This is not what visceral fat is. Visceral fat is the fat that accumulates around the organs, and it squeezes down around the organs and makes it really difficult for them to actually do the proper work that they need to do in our body. Also, visceral fat lets off inflammatory cytokines, and those inflammatory cytokines cause all sorts of havoc in our body, also causing problems with hormones and blood sugar regulation. So what they're finding now is that type 2 diabetes, that's what we know of as insulin resistant diabetes for the older population. They're finding now that high degrees of visceral fat is being called type 3 diabetes. And what that is leading to is dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So we really need to get a handle on this visceral fat. So if your number is above a 10, it's time to get it below a 10 and really work hard at decreasing fat off of your body. Now let's talk about BMR, or basal metabolic rate. This is how many calories your body needs in order to sustain its fat-free mass. In this person's case, they have 121 pounds of fat-free mass, and their basal metabolic rate is 1,556 calories. That's how many calories are needed to sustain that fat-free mass. If I don't eat enough, or you don't eat enough, then you might lose precious bone and muscle. And that's why this number is so important for us, because we use this number as a jump off for a calculation based on how many calories your body actually needs. This is not the number for you. We use this number along with some other calculations like your activity, how much you exercise and how much you work and how much you walk and all those sort of things to basically determine your fat loss and muscle gain goals. And so we love this number, that it's very specific to you. Not one person is alike, because it's going to be based off of your age, your height, your weight, but also based off of your skeletal muscle mass and fat-free mass, in this case on the Inbody. The reason why I love an Inbody versus just going to the internet and calculating your BMR is because the Inbody actually factors in your real fat-free mass. On a calculator, they're just factoring in your age, height, weight, and gender. And so the numbers can be off by a couple hundred calories, which really can affect overall weight loss goals. This last section is just important to our Inbody 380 here at No Bad Days. Not everyone would see this if they're doing their results interpretation from another Inbody 380, but basically what this is saying is that your calories expended by activity, this is going to be different for each person. So if you look at your friend's Inbody results interpretation sheet and their basal metabolic rate is much higher than yours, they're going to expend more calories with each activity based on how much higher their basal metabolic rate is. So basically, this is just giving you an indicator of how many calories you burn with each of these activities, as just kind of an interesting way of looking at it. That concludes the results interpretation for the Inbody 380. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If there was something in here that you wanted to follow up on or go further with, we sure would love to hear from you. Contact us at nobaddays.biz or text us at our text-in line 509-800-5366, where we can go ahead and schedule an appointment with you. We can go through your results interpretation virtually if you'd like, and those appointments are schedulable through those links. And so we would love to hear from you, and we thank you so much for being on our Inbody 380. If you're following us somewhere else in the world, thank you for following this video. And again, we are also accessible through Zoom. So if you'd like to do a call where we can help you assess how many calories your body needs to eat, do your custom macros for you, or even give you meal plans, we certainly can do that. So we'd love to hear from you too. Bye, everybody.